All right, let's dive a little deeper into this. I have still with me Alexis Rosenberg and Deanna Paul. Alexis, I'm going to start with you. I think a lot of this is hearsay. The judge allowed it in. I did hear Brian Steele make an objection. At least I think that was the defense attorney who made that objection, saying that it was hearsay, particularly since the speakers, we know that there were some other detectives who've already testified. We know that Antonio Black testified. Let him testify as to that. How is it that this is coming in if, in fact, Detective Quinn is talking about what some other detective might have seen, might have remembered, might have said?
I agree with you, Terry. This is hearsay, and I'm surprised that it's coming in this fashion, especially since we've already had testimony from different officers. It's coming in because the judge is allowing it, saying it was part of this particular detective that's on the stand's report, stuff he reviewed, part of the investigation. But I don't think it should be coming in this fashion. And it is kind of confusing the issue, too. And I think that's a problem that they're having with this case. Racketeering cases are very complicated for a jury. They're complex cases. And it's kind of the way they're bringing in testimony is going to be confusing and hard for the jury to follow.
Exactly. And this is an incident that occurred in September of 2013. The interview is about a week later. So I'm going to ask you, Deanna, do you think that this testimony is going to help the prosecution at this point? I mean, we've had over 40 days of trial. They are not, this jury, they are not going to be able to remember all of these facts, all of these details. How critical is it that the prosecution ties in Young Thug to this specific incident?
That's a great question. I think this is something that we'll see in closing arguments. I would assume that the prosecutor will tie all of this back then to be able to make the argument to the jury that Young Thug was involved in this particular robbery, and at least give the tools to a juror or in deliberations to go back and make that argument to the rest of the jurors.
Exactly. One of the things you said to me is that this is an interesting witness. He has some sort of personality that comes across. I agree with you 100%. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more to break down with you on this case. And stay with us, the Young Thug trial. All right, so that is the interview with Quinn, Detective Quinn, and Bean, who has been on the stand for days. He's off now, but he couldn't remember anything. I still have with me Alexis Rosenberg and Deanna Paul. They're going to help me break this down. One of the issues, Alexis, is the fact that it is hard to hear what is going on in that interview, but we know that they're talking about the September 11th, 2013 car chase. That whole crime. Detective Quinn is trying to put Young Thug on that scene. You do hear Bean say, yes, he was there. And you do hear them having some sort of conversation. But we all know Bean was on the stand and said he couldn't remember anything. One thing I want to add also before I ask my question is we saw Brian Steele trying to get in a more recent interview with Bean where he admitted, I was wrong. Young Thug wasn't there, but that really did not get into the trial. So the defense has a problem here. Question for you. How does Young Thug and his attorney establish the fact that his client, Jeffrey Williams, Young Thug, was not at that scene and that Bean, who now cannot remember anything, really does know that Jeffrey Williams was not at that scene?
Well, that's a lie, but you are absolutely correct. This tape is very difficult to hear and understand, and it takes a lot. It's going to take a lot of focus by a juror. I think at the end of the day, they're going to focus on the testimony that they ultimately heard on the stand with him saying he doesn't remember anything. Also, I believe that the detective in this video, he may rub his questioning technique. It may rub some of the jurors a little, wrong, as well as he, it seems like he's kind of arguing with him. He's talking over him, even though he said, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think ultimately this is going to be it's already been a long trial, but it's going to be a very long trial. They're going to, the defense, end up putting some witnesses on the stand stating that he wasn't there.
Exactly. And I will tell you that both of these witnesses, Bean and Detective Quinn, are important witnesses for both the prosecution and the defense. We have to take a quick break. Deanna, I promise I'll get to you when we come back on the other side. Stay with us, and we'll be covering the YSL trial out in Atlanta. All right, I still have with us Alexis Rosenberg and Deanna Paul. I'm going to give this question to Deanna. One of the things that we were talking about during the break is the fact that the style of this Detective Quinn, it's very interesting. What are your thoughts?
I mean, you can't really understand what's going on in the room oftentimes. They're talking over each other, and I don't know. I think at the end of it, the jury is going to be a bit confused with what's actually going on in that room. But we'll see. It'll be a credibility determination at the end of the day. And the fact that this was done in 2013, right after the actual robbery, is a good fact for the prosecution.
It is, because at that time, you would think that Adrian Bean remembers more of what happened than he would have now. And he testified that he was taking Molly's and he couldn't remember anything. One thing I think they should have done is to have a transcript also. That would help this jury to try to remember what went on and, what happened during that interview, since it's hard to hear. I want to thank Alexis Rosenberg and Deanna Paul for being with us today. We hope to see both of you again. It's been fun being with you for this hour. And as for the network, we have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere.